to come, and I've got a list of some questions for them. You're going to get a chance to ask questions if you want to as well, to share their insights into this market. So please join me in welcoming. I'm going to welcome back to the stage. Well, actually, you know what, before I do that, there's one little piece of unfinished business. Earlier today, we gave PACE an award, and PACE is also the sponsor of Kishore's survey research, and as such, Michael Pulli from PACE is going to be joining us for this panel. And I thought since Michael wasn't here to get his award earlier, I'd give it to him again. So Michael, please come out and accept the PACE America's Award for Innovation in Customer Premises Equipment. There you go. Okay. We'll get pictures later with Joe. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. So please, again, I'm going to ask Aditya Kishore to come back out. Also, Alan Breznick, who was our moderator yesterday. I get to put him on the hot seat today. And also two other of my favorite analysts, Jonathan Hurd from Altman-Vilandrie and Stephen Hawley from Advanced Media Strategies. I think they're all quaking in their boots backstage.
Got a little cluster at the stairs.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Fighting to get on.
Okay. Third furthest, right?
We'll have you guys start going out in order.
So good.
All right, come on out.
Sorry to hide.
Thank you.
We're waiting.
Oh, they had to get you in the right order. Okay.
Just make this easy, Addy. How's that?
Okay, so.
Thanks, Carol.
Oh, sure. Glad you could all be here. All right, so we're going to start out. Like I said, I have a bunch of questions for them, and we will be taking audience questions if we have time. Hopefully we will. All right, so the first question is kind of the obvious one, and we've been talking about this in a lot of our sessions, the fact that IPTV has proven to be a real profit challenge. You know, everybody knows they want to be in video, they want to offer those services, but with OTT now on the rise, do you believe the broadband ISPs can find profits there? And if so, where? And why don't we start, Addy? You've been sharing some thoughts, so I'm going to start this one with you. Is there profit to be found in OTT video? And if so, where is it?
Oh, I think there's definitely profit to be found in OTT video, and I think in two different ways. I think in terms of packaging it with current linear video and managing it, and I think also in terms of providing a higher quality of OTT video than your competitors.
Okay, and you think broadband ISPs can make can be sharing in those profits from delivering those services?
Right.
Okay. All right, Jonathan, you agree?
Well, I think the answer depending on the size of telco you are, how many subscribers you have. But really, one thing that every broadband ISP can do is differentiate by being a great pipe for OTT video, and saying, you know, disrupt. You're either going to be a disruptor or get disrupted in video as there's a transition from linear TV to OTT. So if you can show subscribers that, you know, if you're a Netflix user, we're a great broadband service for you, that's a real way to differentiate.
Okay. All right, Michael.
Yeah, I agree with the comments. I think it's just a mix issue. It's a mix of whether I have a video or I have a broadband pipe. Consumers are going to take one or the other, or I actually agree. I think it's a combination of the two. I think an OTT service is a complementary service to your linear channels.
Okay. Eddie, would you, based on what you've seen from your consumer research, are consumers ready to pay more to get a better OTT video experience? I mean, you said they're very price sensitive.
They are. I mean, I think whether it's, you know, consumers have always been price sensitive, and I think if you look at ARPU trends for TV, they have been creeping up. So it's getting more expensive for consumers persistently, and then on top of that, you've got an economic climate that's just terrible. So price sensitivity is extremely high. I think just going back to a couple of points that actually everybody's made is that there's part of what an operator needs to start thinking about, at least. And if you're a smaller operator, I think it's quite difficult to actually do a whole lot in this area. But part of what you need to start thinking about is to generate revenue for TV services from others other than the consumer. So start looking at segments like advertisers, start looking at segments like content owners that are looking for OTT delivery at high quality to the end user.
Okay.
See if there's ways you can generate revenue from that.
Okay. Steve, I apologize for making you back cleanup here. Anything you want to add to what's already been said?
Batting cleanup, great metaphor. Actually, in addition to being a smart pipe, there are some, I guess, more business-focused things you can do with OTT. Thinking about the types of content and the types of advertising you can do. One way to monetize OTT is look at some of the premium online content that's out there that's distributed not over the typical multi-channel TV provider, but available over the internet, or for that matter, short form stuff. You think about what comes from the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, or branded content that's well known, Hallmark, people like that have content that can be delivered online, and that could be a tier, that could be an add-on to a tier that helps with customer loyalty. Another might be using the online advertising models both for click-throughs and banner ads, things that are on a static page you might put in an EPG and get click-through revenue, or with streaming content you've got pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll video advertising that can be inserted with streaming content. So there are ways to monetize on the advertising side as well.
Okay, so I'm going to do something that I normally hate when other people do it. I'm going to talk about what my kids do. And the reason is, I heard yesterday that in one of the panels, I think it was in the Alcatel-Lucent workshop, one of the presenters said that when Fox went to an 8-day delay on its programming and allowing people to see its programming online, that they saw a dramatic drop-off in the amount of that program that was viewed. I happen to have two kids who are both theater and music people, and they love the show Glee, and both of them have told me they pretty much stopped watching it because they don't want to wait 8 days, which I'm like, oh, come on, give me a break. But I'm just wondering, are you expecting, is that kind of, and Steve, I'll start with you on this one, is that kind of volatility in that OTT market, is this market going to stay that volatile, or do you think we're going to settle into some more normal viewing patterns?
I think that sooner or later it'll settle into some kind of a steady state. I think we'd all be rich if we knew what that steady state was going to be. But everybody seems to want an unlimited amount of content for free right now, and that's just not realistic. I think there was a couple of pieces of research cited yesterday in the various panels about 40% of people would want to pay for online content, and of those, if somebody actually flipped a switch and said, we're actually going to charge you for that content, maybe a third of those 40% would actually pay. So that's a data point that's stuck in my mind, that there is probably some subset of that universe of people that actually would pay for it, but it's so early, who knows yet.
Okay. So and let me do this, Michael. I'll ask you this one as well. So, do you see this OTT then as being a threat to pay TV services? And Addy shared some thoughts from his research. What did you think?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll give you a child story as well. So my daughter's 3, and when she was 1, she used to grab my wife's iPhone and grab it and swipe it and click onto YouTube. And I sat there and said, everybody brags about their children, how smart they are, and my daughter, of course, is going to go to Harvard and graduate valedictorian and everything. But the thing is, the way they just adapt to the technology. And I think that's the part that we have to come to grips with. I agree, the programming cost and the programmers are going to weigh in heavily into this. So I think it's just this technology shift that the children today are really showing us. And I think that's what we really got to get our hands around. I think from the perspective of making money at it, again, as the programmers weigh in more on this, consumers don't want to pay for anything. So as they begin to charge for this, I think we're going to see the brakes put on to consumers saying, yeah, hey, I like it because it's free today, but if you start charging me, I'm not going to pay for it. And I think this dynamic has yet to really happen. I mean, we saw what Netflix did. They did something very simple. They just doubled their price. Okay? And you see what's happening to them. And you see the subscribers that they're losing.
Okay, I'm sorry, Addy, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to weigh in with a data point that we didn't actually show today, but as part of the survey, we asked consumers what is the number one reason why you pick a particular website to watch video from, and the number one reason was that it was free. So it's, yes, OTT is a threat, yes, it'll be a threat, yes, a certain percentage will start to pay and it will be monetized. But I always sort of go back, we were talking about this yesterday, Alan and I was sort of talking about how, if I look back over the last 5 years and I just look at vendor briefings, vendors coming in, talking about solutions that are oriented around over the top. 5 years ago, every single conversation started off with YouTube. 3 years ago, every single conversation started off with Hulu. For the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, every single conversation started off with Netflix. Yeah. What's going to happen 2 years from now? It's a very, very difficult business to generate revenue from.
Well, I think, go ahead, Alan. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that I think the traditional pay TV subscription model is going to totally fall apart. Colin Dixon was talking about this on our panel yesterday. I think the broadband subscription is going to become the essential subscription, and the pay TV subscription is going to morph into something else, or maybe totally fall apart into some kind of a la carte services, or something where people package subscribers package what they want, or they take something from an aggregator and they take individual services. But I think there's a lot of trouble ahead for traditional pay TV providers.
Well, I thought one of the data points from yesterday that was interesting, again, I think came out of the Alcatel-Lucent workshop. Somebody's talking about the high percentage of the average pay TV bill. They said the average bill is about $60. That a large percentage of that, almost, I think it's $25 of that, goes strictly to pay for sports programming. So if you're not a sports fan, I have a hard time imagining anybody who's not, but if you're not, then you're essentially paying for a service you're never going to use, and that's the kind of thing you're talking about. If you could say, I don't want to pay for that, if you could, so Jonathan, is that where you think?
Well, I agree that I don't think the pay TV market is going to fall apart, but I do think.
Well, I didn't say the market, the model, the subscription model, I think will fall.
I think it'll erode. I mean, and there's just so much inertia on the part of advertisers, the current distribution channel that it's going to take years for it to totally get disrupted, but it's going to get eaten away at the edges because there are consumers out there with very different needs and interests. So some care a lot about sports, some don't care at all about live TV of any sort, and so the challenge and opportunity for service providers is to understand the segments that they're targeting, have offers that are very well designed to meet the needs of their specific target segments, and make sure they retain customers by adding new features in their more valuable segments and go after new segments where they can have a disruptive offer.
Okay. Well, the other thing that I've heard bandied about a lot is, on the one hand, you have networks asking telco TV providers to pay a lot for retransmission rights. On the other hand, they turn around and give away free their content on the web. I mean, that's kind of a basic disconnect to me. Michael, you're laughing at that. What?
I agree with you 1,000%. And you see all these retrans battles, and then you go on to Fox.com and you download their programs, and I'm like, doesn't kind of make sense to me at all. So I agree with you 100%, and that's why I think the programmers, again, I think they're going to weigh in a lot more heavy than what they have.
Okay.
And I think they're saying, hey, yeah, this technology, I'm not a programmer, so I apologize who is out there, and if I'm saying this wrong, I apologize, but I think they have to weigh in, and they're going to look and say, hey, you know what, I have a big pile of money coming in over here, I don't have any money coming over here, so how do I get this thing to balance?
Okay.
And I think that's going to be the trick. And just getting back to the prior question you asked, Carol, is I also think the pay TV model is going to go around the edges, but when you look at a Disney, and you look at all the channels they have, they're not going to let you come in and cherry pick ESPN. They're going to say, you can take ESPN, but you got to take these other 40 channels I got too. And I think this is, again, another big transformation that's going to happen in the marketplace.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I think the issue around content being available online and blocked on TV is that the programmers are most afraid of piracy and of losing subscribers in the traditional TV infrastructure. So they're doing what they need to do for the segments they're willing to watch on a PC. They're making it available, but they want to do anything they can to preserve the TV revenue stream, that $70 billion in advertising dollars that generates. But it's all going to be a matter of balancing around the edges as more and more consumers start using content over the top on different devices.
So I could see making the argument, though, that if you look at the percentage of people who watch traditional TV on a DVR and never watch an ad, that advertising base is already eroded, whereas online you at least would be able to identify who's watching and potentially target them with a message that they couldn't fast forward through. Steve, is that more of a model we see emerging?
Yeah, I would say so. There's also, separate from what we see in like traditional pay TV services now, like DVR, think of apps as being a way that individual programmers can monetize their content. So ESPN and other programmers, sports programmers, will charge directly for online distribution. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got people like Starz, which we heard from yesterday, saying you can't access our content online unless you're a pay TV subscriber and you take Starz within your pay TV tier.
Right.
So there's an interesting way to protect a revenue stream there, just to make sure that they're authenticated within the confines of the pay TV provider.
Okay. John, did you want to add something? No. Okay. So, Alan, what do you think about that? You mentioned the pay TV model changing. Doesn't the DVR break down that model also? I mean, aren't we already seeing that disintegrate a little bit in terms of advertising revenue?
It could. I haven't thought as much about the effect of the DVR on that. I mean, DVR was certainly a threat to the advertising model, but they seem to be making some shifts on that. But I think OTT is a much bigger threat. I think it changes the whole landscape in a way that the DVR looked like the DVR was going to, but I don't think the DVR in the end is going to do that.
Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about differentiating video services. Everybody wants to be able to differentiate their service. If you're a telco TV provider, you've got to make your service look better than the cable, than the satellite, and to some extent, than the OTT. So, we talked, when IPTV was first developed, the IP part of it was supposed to be powerful. It was supposed to offer widgets, interactivity, targeted advertising. That was a big one. Now we're talking about adding social media. Are any of you seeing that kind of differentiation emerge and innovation in that area? And if so, tell me about it.
I mean, sorry, go ahead. I'll go next.
Oh, don't be so polite.
Well, I think the big thing, pay TV operators have historically missed a big opportunity in merchandising content, making recommendations. So Netflix has taken this library of pretty much old content for the most part, but by putting a great recommendation engine on it, they've monetized it. Traditional VOD systems have really poor user interfaces, and I think players like AT&T have created a much better user experience around the video guide, so to speak, or the merchandising engine. There's a lot of room for improvement in that area, but I think that's a real differentiator, is drawing out that additional ARPU from customers by suggesting programming that they can watch.
Okay. So you're not talking about like selling things that are in the show. You're talking about just recommending programming based on user patterns.
Yeah, a pretty basic thing now where most people who are Netflix users would go to their cable VOD system and say, wow, this is terrible, not enough shows, terrible user interface, bad remote, all that stuff.
I don't want to wade through all this stuff to find the one movie
Exactly.
I like. Okay. That makes sense. All right, Michael, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think there's you kind of split it into two. I think one, the UI has a lot to do with it, and I think as a total industry, I think we've got to get better at UIs.
Okay.
Because as the content continues to grow, and you like a particular actor or you like a particular actress, it's so hard to get to. Some have done a good job, some have done a bad job, but I think that's one thing that really absolutely needs to improve. And I think on the widget side, for example, I think as pay TV providers, I think we need to kind of embrace that. Because, look, the TVs are doing it. The
Right.
TVs are in the home. The TVs are after your subscriber through the connected TV. Yep, maybe you'll get a little bit more on the pipe. But by putting those very simple widgets into a set-top box, or, of course, I work for pay, so set-top boxes are good. But by building in that software in order to do that, you're embracing it, and you're letting your subscriber, rather than turn off your system and go onto the TV to do that, let them do it right through your system that they're already operating on.
Okay, explain to me a little bit more about that. I'm not sure I understand.
Sure.
So how would a consumer use that?
Sure. So it's something very simple. You have, you're watching, whatever you're watching, ESPN, and you hit a button on your remote, you hit a B button, and, for example, the widgets could pop up on your TV versus going off of your, out of your set-top box and going onto your TV to do that.
Okay.
So to me, and I also think that's what...
And what kind of widgets are going to show up if I'm...
you can have a numerous number of widgets. You could have a social network widget. You could have a weather widget, a sports widget, whatever it may be.
Okay.
I'm a big fantasy football person. I would love, as I'm watching TV, to be able to hit a button and look at my team and how they're doing statistics-wise.
Okay, your fantasy team.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's capable. The capability is there to do that. It's just that we haven't been able... It hasn't been monetized properly, or I should say technologically developed properly yet by the pay TV industry.
Okay, so why not, Steve?
I was thinking you could take that discovery process one step further and not just discover things that are in your program guide or sitting on your DVR or what have you. You can take it into online content, so you'd have a centralized a UI that says, let me go find content in the DVR, in the program guide for the next 2 weeks, but also online. Let's say your operator is partnered with a search engine company, and maybe there's even some ad revenue that can flow from that, and discover online content that might be streaming, might be informational. What's going on with my Seattle Mariners, God bless him. And,
right now, nothing.
Yeah, right now nothing is absolutely right in more than one respect.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, not everybody gets Theo Epstein. But what stopped the industry from doing this? So this is stuff we've talked about for years. Why haven't we seen this, commercialized?
I mean, I think to some extent we have. I mean, if you look at, both UVerse and Verizon in the U.S. as well as operators globally, they are rolling out a series of sort of applications, whether it's multi-camera viewing of a particular game or, which is a bandwidth-intensive option, and you need to sort of think through how much and how often you want to enable that, or whether it's, little widgets that allow for one thing or another. I think the most important sort of aspect of this is I don't think there's a killer widget. I don't think there's some one amazing thing that you can do with 2 clicks that's just going to make people flock to your service.
Okay.
I think it's probably a combination. You roll out 30 things, and for you, 12 of them are somewhat meaningful and 2 are really valuable. And for him, also 12 are meaningful, but it's a different 12. So I think it's going to be like a bunch of things that are out there, and some of them are kind of useful and some of them maybe not so much.
But so is it the way they're packaged? Is that going to be the
Yeah, I mean, as much as I think consumers sort of want kind of a la carte, both in terms of applications and in terms of services, I think at some basic level, a package makes more sense. With applications, you may see the emergence of app stores, and there's a couple of service providers in the U.S. that sort of are enabling that. It's got to be more cautious because you've got a network. You can't just sort of say, it hung, I'll just reboot. So you've got to move a little more cautiously in that area. But as those things become more available, you probably start off with some sort of base set of applications that are out there. And then if you want something else, you go to an app store and pick it up or pay for it. Maybe you pay $1, maybe you pay $2. But then, that's a capability as well.
Okay. Carol, we're also seeing some progress on the cable side. The cable operators have been slow on this, but they are starting to put some apps in, and they're also finally working on their biggest bugaboo, which has been the user guide. We're starting to see some new user guides come out of Cox. Comcast is testing a cloud-based guide, which they call Excalibur. So we're finally seeing the guides come out of those horrible grids from the 1980s into the real world again.
Okay. Is that going to be enough in terms of differentiating a service? Do you think, would a user guide or one of these widgets be enough to draw somebody away from their current service to a new player? Is that really going to differentiate? Jonathan?
Well, a lot of these things, it's just very hard to market them. Like if it's not a really spectacular difference, or even if it is, you have to go out there and show people it. So it can be expensive to create adoption and interest in these services. That's why I think price is so frequently cited, because it's easy to market price.
Right.
It's harder to convince people that you've got something really better. I think a lot of it will be even making sure your own subscriber base knows when you've got one of these new services, getting them to adopt it, and using it as a retention tool is pretty important. But you look what Apple has to do to create a spectacular new device. It's not just the device, it's all the marketing around it as well.
Yeah. Well, awareness is maybe more than half the battle, but you're using awareness and then retention. You balance pre-sale and post-sale. Once you have the sale, you have to keep people engaged. So I keep thinking back at what Jeff Weber was talking about yesterday. You have to have an experience that keeps people engaged. So what does that really mean? For a service provider, for many service providers, it's outside of their domain of expertise to do software integration that creates a common experience, say, across devices within or outside of the home. So if you're going to retain people, it's got to be easy and engaging to use. With my own background in software product management, that was probably the single biggest challenge in software design is to design a user experience. And reflecting on another comment I heard on one of the panels yesterday was it's very easy to add a feature to something, but it's even much more challenging to remove a feature. And if you're going to make something simple and engaging and easy to use, you will want to bias yourself toward removing features without removing functionality. And back to using Apple as an example, that's one of the things that makes them successful. They have a very predictable experience, and their focus is on design, not on the technology.
Well, it's also interesting, as in AT&T's case, they designed a very interesting user interface for picking multiple views of a game. Unfortunately, they applied it to the Cubs, whose season ended sometime in May. So kind of negated the impact of that app, unfortunately. But it was a very interesting application. All right, so then if we're talking about, we're getting back to the notion of how you differentiate a service, I'm going to start with Addy, each of you go down. Just one thing you would point to that you think out in the market today that truly differentiates a video service.
I mean, content, but I don't know that Sunday ticket, differentiates the service, but I don't know that that's an option for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, customer service is clearly something that's important to consumers. So if there's ways you can improve on that, that's...
Okay, well, let me give these guys a chance to think about what their answer and ask you more about customer service, because that showed up on your survey. So we were talking about what does customer service mean in the telco TV world? What are consumers looking for when they say, I want better customer service?
That's kind of interesting. I mean, I'd go back a few years, a lot of years, to surveys that I ran some time back, and we looked at... we asked that particular year, we asked pay TV subscribers how many problems they had that they classified as significant or major or, whatever, with their provider. And then we asked them how satisfied they were with their provider. And in fact, that year, the satellite subscribers had considerably more problems they classified as major or significant with their provider. But customer satisfaction with their provider was higher for satellite subscribers. So they had more problems, but they were happier with their provider. I think that's the key to customer service. It's not so much eliminating problems, it's dealing with them really well, really efficiently, making you feel like, yep, okay, saw the problem, we're fixing it, it's done, you're good to go.
Interesting. Okay. All right, so Alan, back to the original question you're supposed to be thinking about. What one thing would you point to you think truly differentiates a video service?
Well, I would agree with Adi on customer service, but the second thing I would add to that is video quality. I know DirecTV has been fighting that battle with cable operators, and now I think Verizon and AT&T have been fighting that battle. So who provides the best HD picture, and it'll probably get to the point where who provides the best 3D picture. I think that really does matter, and people will do switch based on the quality of the picture they're getting.
Okay. Michael?
I think multi-screen. Being able to view content on different devices, I think, is a big differentiator today.
Okay. Being able to do it on an iPad and an smartphone, et cetera. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jonathan?
It gets tougher as you get near the end.
It does.
You could reuse one of our
They took all my
answers.
answers.
Actually took yours.
As I say, it could be worse, it could be Steve.
I think I'll say having a great broadband service as part of the bundle. As increasingly it gets tougher to have a linear TV offer in the face of all this fragmentation and OTT. At least make sure that you've got a great broadband pipe, and we've got examples of some players around the world that have gigabit per second broadband now in the consumer market. So, you can differentiate on the basis of speed, and there's no end to consumers' need for speed.
Okay. All right.
I can just hear Tom Cruise, the need for speed. So I have to agree with Michael. The old adage in retail, location, 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 and everybody is really wringing their hands over cord cutting and cord shaving, and slowly the erosion of the subscriber base. Well, we're now seeing that it's because these people are moving from the living room screen to some other screen. Okay. And from the living room screen to many other screens. Mm-hmm. So if you're a service provider that can get your content to as many screens as possible within the home and outside the home, even outside your service footprint, I think that'll be a major differentiator. Netflix is very good at that.
Okay, in order for service providers to do that, are they going to have to be doing transcoding inside the home? How are they going to accomplish that? Michael, maybe I should ask Michael, since you're the customer premises back here.
So look, there's a variety of ways to do it. You can transcode if you're going to take something out of the set-top box, or once it's in the cloud in order for the devices to grab it.
Okay.
So we're seeing a big push now to put a lot of transcoding inside of our devices. Why? Because people want to be able to pull things out of a set-top box. Now again, you get into copy once, you get into different rules around what the programmers have. But I think another killer app would be able to download my DVR onto my portable device. Yeah. Now again, you're opening a gigantic can of worms there, but boy, wouldn't it be great? I'm going on a flight, I got a wireless way to download my DVR onto my iPad or to my tablet, and now I'm on the plane watching really what I want to watch because I recorded it, I want to be able to do it. I think the first person who breaks through on that and really cuts, and gets to that, I think will have a big competitive advantage, but once that dam breaks, everyone will come through very, very quickly.
That's DirecTV Nomad, essentially,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I have DirecTV, and I have DirecTV because I have Sunday Ticket, okay? So I have I have an iPad, and I have their application. So a couple weeks ago, I was in New York. I went to the Jets game, And I like the Dolphins, so sorry to everyone who likes the Dolphins this year. And with their application, I was in a passenger seat going down the turnpike at 80 miles an hour, and I was watching the Dolphins on my iPad. And granted, it wasn't 100%, the quality was okay. It was certainly watchable without any doubt. And then, of course, a message popped up from AT&T that said, hey, you're going over your limit in 10%, so you might want to turn this off or you're going to pay me more. So I shut it off and didn't watch the end of the game.
Okay.
You didn't mention that the Jets won that game.
I don't like the Jets too much, but anyway, then they did win.
Okay, but that comes back to something Jeff Weber said yesterday, because he was asked, one of my bosses, Phil Harvey, asked him about why the content's different on the iPad from the iPhone, and it's all content rights. So are the content owners going to let all this multi-screen viewing happen? I mean, isn't that going to be one of the big challenges there?
I mean, I think you're going to face some challenges moving that rapidly. I think you already have. Service providers are pretty keen to push as much content to as many screens as possible across, cable, satellite, telco. Everybody wants to do it. From a technology standpoint, I think we're fundamentally there. Could get better, could get easier, could get cheaper, definitely, but you can do it. The problem is the content. There's relatively little really high-value content that is being allowed to do that. But I think if you're a content owner, you have two choices. You can either do it yourself or you can do it with your pay TV provider. You can't not do it. I don't think that's a viable, even medium-term decision any longer. It has to be done.
It really depends on the type of content, though. So South Park Digital, for example, makes all its episodes available online, like right as they're airing, because they know that if they didn't do that, people would watch it on BitTorrent. So it depends on what segments the content is targeted at, and it's effectively another window making it available. And it's not as lucrative in most cases as traditional TV advertising, but finding a way to. But you could have more targeted ads, of course, if it's an interactive medium. So I think gradually they'll make it available, but it just will depend on what the type of content is.
Well, is it going to come down to also the ability to authenticate the user? I mean, we saw a deal earlier this week. NCTC is going to be doing a broad authentication play to be able to say, yes, this user is paying for this content at home, and we'll let them take it with them on their iPad, but this guy isn't, and we're not going to let him view it on an iPad. I mean, is that really what it's going to come down to? Michael, you're not.
Some people are already doing that. So, I mean, for example, in my case, as I mentioned earlier, DirecTV knows that I'm a paying subscriber. So when I log in, they already know. So that authentication piece, and I agree with Adi, the technology is there. I mean, the authentication is there, the transcoding is there, the cloud is there. Everyone kind of knows how to do it. It's just a question of, what are the kind of the pieces that need to fall. And I think the programmers,
business model pieces?
I think the business model, and I think the programmers have got a way kind of in this. Because look, at the end of the day, the programmers pay a lot of money for their content.
Right.
They, charge the pay TV provider who then charges us as consumers. And I think they want to make sure that their content is protected. And that's a big concern, very big concern.
I agree with that, Carol. Our surveys show that the content licensing rights is definitely the major issue when it comes to multi-screen video, and it's going to come down to working out the business model and also working out the revenue split, and there's going to be some nasty negotiations over the next couple of years over that, but they will work it. They have to work it out, so they will work it out, but it could make the European bailout stuff look pretty.
But it also highlights, though, so HBO Go is an authenticated model.
Right.
You have to be an HBO subscriber to use it, but it really highlights what you can do with IP and effectively over-the-top distribution, because you can watch, unlike my VOD system, where I can only watch a few episodes of a few of their series, you can watch pretty much any episode of any series on HBO Go. So the quality of the video isn't as good, but the selection is fantastic. So it's a new value proposition to consumers.
Okay.
I think it's also worth kind of looking at Starz. They launched their own service, Vongo, a few years ago for direct distribution, and then they kind of backed off that model a little bit and then decided that they were going to do this authenticated model with their pay TV partners. So I think that there's a lesson there in terms of sort of from a content owner's perspective. If you're planning to sort of go alone, you need to, to Jonathan's point, also you need to think about what kind of content you have, and if you've got a cable channel that's an important part of your revenue base, and you need to balance out your sort of priorities. But there's something to be said for sort of not going on your own if you're a content provider as well, partnering with a pay TV provider.
Okay. All right, so new topic, and I have topics aplenty up here, but in about 10 minutes or so, we're going to open up the floor. Now, these guys, normally you have to pay them for their opinions. This is your chance to ask them something and get it answered for free, okay? So one of the things that's been talked about a lot, and we're going to hear a little bit more about it, I think, from our final speaker, from Eric Bruno from Verizon, are the notion of auxiliary services. Carl Russo mentioned today the notion of providing computer support or providing in-home support. More and more people need that as we have more and more devices, and you want to connect all this stuff up. So is that a way in which you see broadband services or telco TV services being differentiated with things like the Geek Squad, home monitoring, video conferencing, remote energy management? Are these still viable ways of differentiating a service and generating more revenue? And Jonathan, I haven't made you go first, so go for it.
I think those are all opportunities. The challenge associated with any of those, and by the way, a couple I think are very more low-hanging fruit than those, let's say.
Okay, which couple?
A couple are cloud backup or cloud storage. So being able to automatically back
all
up
your digital
PC,
photos and all those things.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Okay.
And charging for that. And another one is security. Sounds boring, but and many service providers give it away, but we in our global scans we found some that sell it. The problem with all of these is when you're in a conversation with a customer, and many of those conversations are still over the phone, they're not online purchases, you can only pitch one or two at most value-added services while you're still trying to sell people on your double or quadruple play. So the key is having that selling conversation, the execution of having that selling conversation is really what makes the difference between being successful with these things and being unsuccessful.
Okay. So you've got to be able to figure out how to market these new options and do it in a, I mean, it sounds like you're talking about really a closed community kind of way.
Market and sell. Like how many minutes do you want to be on the phone when you're selling these services?
Right.
How quickly can you get through the broadband part, the voice part, the video part, and then get onto these things?
Okay. Alan, so cable's doing this as well.
Cable's doing this. Cox and Comcast are starting to do home security through their broadband subscription. I think that's part of why I think that the broadband subscription is going to become the core subscription in the home and not the pay TV subscription, because the broadband subscription will allow you to do all sorts of different kinds of services like remote monitoring or energy control, home security, that sort of thing, as soon as the companies get up to speed in how to market and promote this kind of service.
Okay. All right. Addie, any thoughts you want to add based on are consumers willing to pay for these additional services, or is that going to going to be a stumbling?
I think they will, depending on the service and the sort of demographic segment that you target. I think that is a different enough service that it's not sort of tied to pay TV specifically. It's something else that you're paying for, an incremental sort of value. So it's a decision that's made kind of independently in some ways, though obviously the bundling aspect is going to be attractive. I just wonder how much of a differentiator really anything can be, because we're looking at sort of networks becoming more and more sort of similar, more and more consistent in terms of technology. So if my competitor's got a service that works, I mean, how long is it going to take before I pick it up and run with it? So I think that is a bit of a challenge in terms of sort of differentiation, is you've got a little window where you can reap the benefits of it, and then everybody else is sort of catching up with you.
Okay.
Hey, Carol, sorry, just to add, I think the one complication as more devices go into the home is going to be around the customer support area, which a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to. And just to jump back to OTT, if I'm a straight 100% OTT subscriber and now I don't have video, who do I call? Do I call my broadband guy? Do I call the television guy?
Yeah.
Do I call the remote control guy?
Right.
Like, who do I call to solve my problem? Where today I know who I call. So I think as more devices get added into the home, there's going to be a level of complication that I think some understand and know, and I think there's many, though, that don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good point.
I think people are willing to pay for that, too. This whole idea of a digital concierge or something, just to make up a name for it. A lot of people here in the room have a device made by Apple, and probably most, I can speak for myself. I always buy AppleCare. I buy an Apple device. which is an extended warranty. But what you also get with AppleCare is you can call them on the phone or schedule a meeting
Human
with
being. Wow.
a human being,
What a concept.
or schedule a meeting, a face-to-face personalized meeting with somebody in one of their retail locations. Now, that sounds okay, ho-hum, but they will support third-party software. They'll support third-party devices. I had a very complicated home networking problem where I've got a main router and then a couple of small routers in the house connected to my sound system, and I had conflicts, and they walked me through it, and several of the things were third-party. So, well, am I willing to pay for that? I pay, 15% extra for AppleCare just so I can have that service. And I imagine that there are people in the pay TV subscriber universe that would do the same thing. Time Warner apparently has been fairly successful with their signature home service. It's $179 a month. That's pretty high price.
$179 a month for?
Triple play.
Okay. But that comes with some built-in
And that comes with
support.
in fact, that's where I heard the digital concierge term.
Okay. Interesting. Anybody else Jonathan, you want to add anything on that?
No.
So we didn't talk specifically about remote energy management. I just want to throw it out there for a minute because it's one of the things that it's part of, I think, the service Verizon's offering, and it is something that's been kicked around, the notion of smart grid. Did any of you guys see this becoming part of the mix, the service mix, and if so, is it going to be any kind of significant part? Michael, you're nodding.
Yes.
Everybody else is kind of looking at me blankly, but you're nodding. So
yeah, absolutely. It is going to be a very big part. Again, if you broke the market into segments, I think the IP guys have done a very good job. The IPTV guys have done a very good job around this. I think the cable guys have struggled to some degree.
Okay.
And I think the satellite guys are getting there. So again, as we start talking about multi-screen and more wireless and home security and telemedicine and all these other things
Right.
coming in, people are going to look for someone to call outside of someone who's going to, hey, I'll charge you to do this.
Okay.
Because I'm sitting there, I'm writing a check every month to my service provider. They're going to solve my problems because they sold me all this stuff.
Right.
Remote management and device management is going to be extremely important.
Okay. Yeah, we actually did a little remote energy management in our house and discovered the Comcast boxes were the big power draw. Not what I expected.
They weren't Pace, were they? They weren't Pace boxes, were they? Carl, no.
I'll have to go home and look.
The answer's
No,
no.
I'm sure not. How many you got? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give this the chance. I'm going to give you guys a chance again to highlight innovation here. What do you see in the vendor community? And Michael, I guess the gimme for you. What do you see the vendor community is doing to innovate, to help telco TV providers, again, find more revenue or find better ways of providing service? And Alan, I'm going to start with you, and you can talk about something from the cable side, because these guys would probably want to be aware of that.
Well, even though Michael's on the panel, I have to say that Pace has been doing a lot of things to innovate.
But you want him to sponsor your research next year, right?
What do you need? You need a couple 20s?
As a newer player, the newer set-top players like Pace have been pushing the innovation. So we won't just include Pace. We'll talk about Samsung. We'll talk about some of the others. But they have been the ones that have been pushing the two big set-top makers, the Motorola's and Cisco's of the world, into doing new things, into moving ahead. So any new player like that is the ones I give the most credit to.
What kind of innovations have you seen them bring to market first?
Well, they were the first ones to go into HD. They've been the first ones to add applications, the first ones to add smart TV connections. I mean, lots of things that Motorola and Cisco would not have done.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Michael, you want
Is there anything to add?
Okay, Addy, what about you?
I actually think one of the advantages for service providers is the fact that they have access to a large pool of telco-oriented equipment vendors who have deep pockets, big R&D budgets, and spend a lot of time trying to create sort of the next generation of technologies and services. So I'm not going to pick a particular vendor or a particular technology, but just in general, I think when service providers started rolling out IPTV, one of the advantages that I think they did have in competing with cable at the time was that they did have these guys, these big guys with a lot of potential for creating full-on solutions and really pushing the market. So there was a lot of innovation. And I think it has had an impact. It has sort of rolled it out. The downside, well, one, a lot of these solutions made by big companies are expensive, and so they're really aimed at tier ones. And two, I think, the cable and telco networks are starting to look a lot alike at various levels. So I don't think that differentiation. We had Scientific Atlanta and General Instrument, going back a while, but they're both gone now. They're both, it's Cisco and Motorola, and in fact Google now. So all these worlds are kind of colliding quite significantly.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Jonathan.
Yeah, Mike, don't hit me, but I think Xbox as a set-top box is a pretty interesting innovation in general. A game console, if there's going to be one there, and a home anyway. The additional processing power that brings from a subsidized piece of hardware essentially is pretty interesting, and Comcast, Verizon, AT&T are all...
Right, because the consumer's buying that and bringing it home on their own.
In many cases, yeah, absolutely. Or this might push them over the edge as well to get one.
Okay. Good point.
And by the way, excuse me, I've been saying it I've been at Pace for 8 years. For probably 7 years and 350 days, I've been saying our competitor at one point is going to be the game console people.
Okay.
Now, again, I think you're back into that customer service issue. When something goes wrong, who do you call? But ultimately, you look and say, that device kind of makes some sense. It really does.
That makes... Okay. All right, Steve?
Well, if an operator wants rapid time to market and is as low a cost as possible, absolutely customized to their needs, that's a horribly expensive proposition for a supplier. A supplier can't go and build something custom in 60 days and have it deployed. It's just not realistic. So what they can do is open up their platforms and make it easy to develop something for that platform. So, middleware platform X or customer premise device X, if you can develop a branded user interface or something, and I had good development tools and good developer technical support, that would give me what I as an operator would presumably want, which is control over the experience that I provide to my subscribers.
Absolutely. Okay. Have you seen anybody do that?
I can tell you most of the TV middleware companies do it. Most of the set-top companies do it. It's not something that's unrealistic. All of them have developer support programs, whether the operator is a developer or a third-party independent software developer might be doing the work. So. Okay,
good. All right. If we want to turn the house lights up a little bit and see if there are any brave souls. We have microphones right down here. I'd love to, again, these guys normally make you pay for it, so feel free to step up and ask a question. If not, I'm going to continue, but please step up the mic if you do have something to ask. So we've had a couple references over the course of this panel to Apple. And there's been a lot of discussion this week, and I apologize I didn't warn you guys about this question in advance. There's a lot of discussion this week as to whether there's still this sort of Apple TV move. I know Apple TV already exists, but whether or not that Steve Jobs solved this whole TV problem. If Apple's going to swoop into that market the way they swooped into smartphones and where they swooped into music. So is that a threat? Is that a serious threat? Is that something that you think should keep these guys up at night? Jonathan, you're not...
I think connected TVs in general are a big disruptor because suddenly you've got this path to consumers that's interactive and it's got a rapid return path to advertisers. So the ability for content owners to go direct potentially, the ability for advertisers to have a much more measurable platform. And I think there's no doubt Apple is going to come out with a TV eventually when they feel it's right. And I could imagine all kinds of things when you think about our TV experience today, all kinds of aspects of that they could improve.
Okay. All right. So, Michael, obviously this is something you must worry about.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, when you compare the two, the music industry and the video industry, they're extremely different. I used to be able to turn my radio on and listen to music. Granted, it wasn't maybe not the song that I wanted, but it was free. It was in my car, it was at home, whatever it may be. The video business is very, very different. And I think the piece that a lot of people miss is the legacy. There's so much legacy in video. You look at the IPTV guys, and I agree with Adi, they had a greenfield. They rolled out the latest and greatest technology, and I think if you fast forward 3 years, I think they'll sit and go, yeah, I should have done maybe this different. But technology changes so quickly, and you can't forget what you already have in the field. And I think that's the piece that anyone coming into this space has to realize. And layer on top of that, in the cable space, at least you have a duopoly around CAs.
Okay.
So you start thinking about all these things, it makes it a little more difficult to break in the right way
okay.
Than I think what a lot of people understand.
All right, great. Adi or Alan, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that pretty well sums it up.
Okay. All right. Again, any brave soul want to step up and ask a question? Oh, hey, got somebody.
So a few years back, the TiVo was an option. I waited for my provider to have the DVR as part of my package. Right now, Slingbox is an option, and we're waiting for our providers to offer that solution. Is it purely the content licenses that is the barrier? I mean, clearly the technology exists.
I think with Slingbox, one of the issues is the reason service providers don't offer it is it has the potential to limit the number of set-top boxes you'd buy in a home, and it's also, and it can be hard to set up. Has all kinds of issues from a technology perspective. So I would say there, it's not just the content, it's that it doesn't necessarily add a lot to the service provider from a differentiation perspective, and there's a lot of potential downside to it as well.
Okay.
We're starting to see a little bit of experimenting with Slingbox. So Time Warner's doing it in New York now. New York City, they're offering subsidized Slingboxes to subscribers. They just started doing it in late September. It'll be interesting to see how far that and how well that experiment goes.
Yeah, and DirecTV just announced Nomad, which is a Sling-type device.
I'm sorry, say that again?
DirecTV just announced Nomad, which is a
Right.
Sling-type device.
Like a Slingbox.
Side-loading device.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So Alan, what you said, Time Warner's testing this. So basically, if you're a Time Warner subscriber, you can get that as an option, and you can send like what you would do with
Right. I don't know all the details about it because it's interesting because I don't know how they're getting around the content licensing right question of being able to allow their subscribers to watch video outside the home. They say that they have the rights to do this because of the way they're distributing it, and I have to find out more about it because it doesn't totally make sense to me. I don't see why they're not getting threatened with all these lawsuits like Cablevision did over their network DVR.
Okay.
I think the other thing, I think the other thing, just getting back to the question a little bit, is I think anytime you introduce a second device into the home, a second piece of hardware, I think you start running into problems. So I think if you look at TiVo, I think TiVo, for example, should have taken their software and give it to every single set-top box provider in the world and said, just port this and get me out of the hardware business. Because of the fact that, life will get a little easier. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to solve probably one of the bigger problems, that UI problem, that everybody loves TiVo. Everybody thinks TiVo is the hard drive. But, I'm going to help solve that problem. And I think that's been a pretty big barrier to entry for that company and potentially, some other companies who want to break in.
Okay. All right, Steve, you want to add?
Well, to add to the TiVo comment, if you talk to somebody at TiVo, they will tell you they're not a set-top company anymore. They'll tell you they're a software company that builds a user experience and a discovery capability, and will meld that or bolt that onto a pay TV service. So look at Virgin Media and company and some of the MSOs here that have custom integrated, had TiVo custom integrate the TiVo service with the MSO's service, and then offer the TiVo device. And apparently in England it's pretty successful.
Right. Here, though, remember, it is a standalone piece of hardware. It's not integrated today.
Understood.
Yeah, which is to me, that's the big barrier.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. So I'm just going to ask one wrap-up question, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking. I mentioned this earlier, a little bit about this earlier, but increasingly we're seeing tablets become devices in the home and much more used in the home. And what impact do you think specifically tablets are going to have in the way people are watching TV, and what the service providers might have to do inside the home? And Michael, why don't I ask you? Does having a tablet, what does that mean for a service provider if people are going to want to watch their TV on a tablet inside the home, closed environment?
Yeah, for me, if it's seamless, and my downloading the DirecTV app was painless.
Right.
Controlling my DirecTV box was painless. And I think, to me, if that happens, I think you're going to see a lot more people using it. If it turns into a job and it turns into a chore, people don't look. If I was 18 or 19 or 20, I have lots of time on my hands. I don't have a lot of time right now. Right. So it's like, guys, just make this thing work and make it work very quickly and efficiently, and I don't need to deal with problems.
Do you think it's going to become a consumer expectation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Addy, would you agree with that?
Yeah, clearly, I think if the experience is sort of unpleasant, then I think it's going to be very difficult to push because it is something that's new, and particularly, I think it's kind of interesting. There's a big push towards iPads in particular to support the iPad, even though there are more sort of Android devices out there. There's a focus on iPads. So it is seen as kind of this premium. And they're used to, whatever you say about Apple, they make it easy to use. So they're coming in with this perspective that this is going to work, this is going to be easy, and if it's not, then that's a problem. I think one interesting aspect of the tablet equation could be that you start to see kind of this two-screen activity, that some of the widgets we've talked about aren't actually necessary on the TV. You just have them on the iPad, and there's some of that activity going on here, and then it's linking or connecting with the VC. So that might be a interesting new trend.
Okay, great. We got a minute left. Anybody got?
Yeah, just in the video research that we've done, of those who own tablets, which is about 20% of consumers, those who are under 45, about 50% of the respondents said they use a tablet weekly to watch TV shows and movies. Okay. So it's a great consumption device, but I also agree from a companion device perspective, controlling the TV or watching coordinated advertisements or applications is going to be part of the TV experience.
Okay. Yeah. All right, great. Okay, please join me in thanking our panelists. Get up out of these chairs.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. You guys can head on out this way.